welcome to Q&A with S&A. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Shane.
And today we have a special guest in our studio, as we always do, Shalini Mendis. Thank you for joining us, Shalini.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to throw it over to you so you can tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll ask a whole range of questions. So tell us what you do in your everyday and why you do it.
So I'm the principal family lawyer at Fairbank Lawyers, and all I do every day is family law.
Yeah.
So I assist clients with dealing with the breakdown of their relationships. I help them with sorting out parenting arrangements following a separation. I deal with issues of child support, spousal maintenance, and sometimes in the unfortunate event they are in court, I assist them with court litigation.
Yeah. So it's a pretty intense day today.
It is a pretty intense day, and it's very varied. So
yeah. And you run your own business, so
yes,
it's yours. What made you decide, firstly, to get into something so intense like family law, and secondly, to go out on your own as, in an industry where you and I know it's, pretty male dominated?
So it goes back a couple of years, actually, during university. I went to Monash University for my law degree, and I was a little unsure as to what I wanted to do and specialise in law. And, the advice was always try everything, see what you like and what suits your personality. And I was very lucky. I was enrolled into a subject called the Family Law Assistance Program that did a summer subject. And I was very junior, and I kind of went into it with open eyes, and I thought, well, we'll see what happens. And as soon as I went into court, it was out in Dandenong actually,
wow.
So the Dandenong Family Court, it just all kind of clicked, and that was in my second year of university. And so from that moment, I continued to look for opportunities in family law, in private practice, in community legal centres, and including a stint up in the Northern Territory. So
wow,
that was a wonderful experience, and I was very grateful for that. And then following my graduation, I continued at boutique family law firms in Melbourne. And I was just really lucky with where I landed, I guess. And I was working under some fantastic mentors who are still practicing at the moment. So it's a very small world, and, you know, just to have that mentorship was fantastic. So I think after a few years, I specialised, and at that point in time, I just thought, I'll give it a crack and see what sole practice will be about. And through a series of events, I set up practice last year and kind of continue what I've been doing for years, but it's just under a different umbrella.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, because family law is what they call a specialist. You have to be accredited to do it, don't you? So tell me about how that works. So because some of our listeners will be, uni students who are still thinking about where they want to go with law. Tell me about how that works. Like, you obviously decided pretty early on that you wanted to do what you do. What do you have to do to get to be an accredited family lawyer?
Sure. So the specific requirements are that you need to have had at least 5 years of practice.
Okay.
And that I think there's a component that at least 3 or 4 years, I can't remember the specifics, require you to do family law full-time. And I think at that point, a lot of people were applying in my kind of practice bracket, age-wise. And the process requires you to undertake a take-home assessment. So you have to do a series of court documents and advice to a client. Then you have to do a pretty strenuous exam, and there's a lot of cases to read and a lot of prep to get underway before you sit that exam. And then finally there's a simulated interview with a fake client, but it's a client nonetheless. And all of that gets assessed by a series of accredited specialists who have a board in Melbourne. And then we get the result. It's pretty stressful, but
I was going to say that sounds
completely worth
stressful.
it. Yeah, completely worth it.
Is that the same for all of them, or is that just like a family law thing?
There's a few practice areas. So there's property, there's commercial, there's all the usual areas of law. and they kind of rotate
Okay.
every other year. So there's a chance to sit it.
Okay, so you could be more than a specialist in more than one thing.
That's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, but still pretty intense.
Pretty intense. And I was just very fortunate again to work for someone who was very encouraging of me to sit that exam, but also obviously your file load can have an impact on your study. And so I was able to try and do both to a standard that was acceptable. But, so I wasn't completely tearing my hair out before the exam.
So you've kind of, got to hope that you work for an organisation that is going to support what you're doing in that respect. So,
or at least make it very clear that that's something that you want to do.
Yeah, okay. So your advice, I guess, would be that if you want to go down that path, you have to be pretty strong in your motivation.
Yes.
Yeah, particularly with an employer.
That's right.
I've got it. I want to do this.
Yes, and I think in most places it would be, quite welcomed. So
yeah, okay, okay. So it's something, because I don't know a lot about how the legal profession works. I know we have a side of our practice that is a legal firm, but that is run by people that are far more specialist at it than what we are. So we kind of leave those things to them. So it's interesting to hear that, it's something that's encouraged at, an employee level, that people want you to do that sort of extra training.
And I think it's interesting because, once I passed and, all the emails and things started saying that I was an accredited specialist, it was funny to see the reaction from my clients. And they said, oh, what did that entail? And I remember sitting in a mediation one day, one of my clients was just asking me all about the process and how hard was it and what did you learn? And it was, really interesting that clients actually, they take that into account as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's good to know that, it's interesting to understand the process behind it, because I think a lot of people just deal with a professional services sort of relationship like, they just know what they're talking about.
Yes.
I don't actually know how they do, but they do. So
it's just a little bit, it's a step away from your law degree, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting.
So what attracted you to family law? So what was it that clicked for you?
Yes, that was that moment all those years back in Dandenong. But also for me since then, I think it's helping the clients and they come to me at a specific point in their life, and it's interesting to see how their view of not only their own situation but how the law impacts their life changes in a little cycle. Some of them are quite a quick cycle, but some of them that are, have the more complex situations that require a bit more negotiation and hopefully a settlement before court, or even if it settles during court, you really see that cycle. And I think helping that client through that cycle in as least, a resistant way as possible is really rewarding for me. But also I really enjoy the clients that take control of their own case as well, and I'm seeing more and more of that now where the clients come to me at a certain point where they've gone, I've got it to this point now and can you please help me with the rest? And it's fabulous to see that they've taken, a lot of information from the internet, they've spoken to people and they've taken it into their own hands, which is obviously the best way to do it, and then get lawyers in when you absolutely cannot or you just don't know how to formalise your settlement.
And it's very emotionally charged.
That's correct.
So how do you manage the emotions of your client as well as the other side?
Yes, very good question, Shane, because that comes up a lot, as I assume you would say in your practice too. I think over the years it's taken me a little while to figure out the right balance with this, because the clients, and if it was me, I'd want my solicitor to hear me and see how they're reacting to my story. And I think listening is really important and not reacting, but also just taking it in and then finding options. So for me, I've kind of not a laid back approach. It's, very intentional, but my clients often just pour their story out onto me and I just take the facts and that's it. And after that, that's what I'm here to do, apply it to the law, apply the law to their situation and then give them options. And I think at the start of my career, I used to think I have to give them the right answer. I have to tell them what the right thing to do is. There's a lot of pressure on me. But really, they are the ones that need to make the decision. They're the ones that are living this life. So you give them the options, they make the choice. So that takes the emotional aspect out of it quite quickly when you're looking at the facts. And now I've forgotten the second element of your question.
just how it's emotionally charged. But leading on from that is mental health issues.
Yes.
This is a big area where matrimonial breakdown or otherwise can put some mental health issues into the forefront as well.
Right.
So, with what we do, and I'm assuming what you do as well, you've also got to you've got to identify those issues as well when you're dealing with your clients, and that's about how you deal with those as well.
So true. And again, like I said, it's listening, because a lot of that comes out in the nonverbal.
Yes.
And especially if you just pick up those things in that initial conference alone, it can help direct the strategy much better. Since COVID, the face-to-face conferences has become much more commonplace, but also we still have those remote initial conferences, for myself with clients overseas or interstate. But I think at a minimum for me, at least, and different practitioners practice in different ways, but at least being able to see their face at that initial stage, and hopefully by themselves, or if they're with their friends or their family, that they know it's just them that I'm listening to. But mental health is a key one, and not only just for clients, for practitioners too.
Yes, I was going to lead to that as well. And how do you deal with that too?
For me, I like to keep work in the office. Obviously, I work from home as well where I need to. But I like to do a lot of things outside of work that aren't related to family law. It's interesting, though, that everything seems to spiral back to family law. I'll be going to, a movie or the theatre with friends and something's related to family law, or I'll be going out for dinner and someone's talking about their situation, and, I don't mind that. But, I play badminton regularly with a group of friends, and we get quite competitive. And I've also started learning Italian. So, mi amore. love Italy, and just wanted to start learning the language, and it's a great distraction for me, and wonderful people who have also got a similar during the day 9 to 5 situation, and just doing something completely different really switches your mindset around.
It's really important. We'll come back. We'll talk more about your extracurricular activities, or whatever you want to call it. But just back to what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Are you finding that most things have been more so binding financial agreements are being put in place as opposed to going to court? Is there a trend or anything in respect to this, or is it
hard to say, Shane? I think it depends on the client situation. So again, obviously the binding financial agreements for the audience are it's a private contract basically between the parties, and they're usually entered into for one of two reasons. The first is normally because they're quick and you don't have to, you're as quick as the other side can respond to you and prepare documents or sign off on documents. The second reason is that you can often have a private contract and on terms that a court might not sign off as being within the range of what an outcome might be in your case in relation to financials. So it suits certain families for that reason. I get a mix. So I get some families that have really clear set of terms and sometimes want parenting orders as well. So I will go off to the court and file for consent orders in that situation. Doesn't mean that we're having a hearing and filing an affidavits or anything like that. It's just an application with some orders. But the binding financial agreements are really where we've got a few complexities in the family portfolio or in relation to child support arrangements. And I would say it's about a 50-50, to be honest.
Oh, interested. Yeah. And again, whether you want to answer this or not, the court process and the timeliness of that, how the court's coping with the volume of family law matters that they're dealing with.
Yes, there's quite a big push to have cases heard and dealt with more quickly. We've had a series of registrars, senior judicial registrars, judges added to the court staff, and I've certainly had cases listed more quickly in the past. And there's also a different kind of triaging of case issues now as well. So we go through a slightly different staged approach to get to an outcome. That said, it's also a time when there's a lot of separations occurring and people are needing to use court resources because of the standard, cost of living and things like that. So it's still kind of timely. It takes a little while.
Yeah,
so
no, I understand.
I'd say to some clients it can be, if you settle it, if you want to compromise and have a settlement agreement, it can be 6 months or less. But if we're having litigated issues and we're determining them at interim hearings, multiple times, it can be as much as 2 years or more.
Wow.
So,
yeah. And you talked about the cost of, the cost of living pressures and things like that. Is that a barometer in terms of the volume of work that you get? So is there a direct correlation between the economy not travelling so well and the number of family law matters?
I love this question. I would say, yes. And it's interesting to see, it might correlate with you, the time, I think, when there's changes to the interest rate and things like that, I notice that there's a bit of a pause. People are trying to work out their finances and then say, okay, now I've got a bit to contribute towards my legal fees.
Yeah.
Others, you just can't wait. So they've got to prioritise that above other things and seek family support or get loans and things like that. So where possible, and this is another big reason why, going out on my own has been a little bit more freeing in that respect. I can speak to the clients and figure out exactly what their financial situations are and where I can fit in that.
Yes.
To still have them get the support they need at that time, so they're not waiting, because sometimes delay can impact things.
Yeah, and you need to get paid for what you're doing as well.
Yes.
So that's part of the part of it as well. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating area, a challenging area, but a fascinating area. And the dynamic between people and, one size does not fit all.
That's right.
And so the dynamics of each relationship is quite different.
Yes.
And the animosity maybe, or the cooperation between the parties can be quite different. And being on the outside looking in,
yes,
I can see how that's a challenging but also rewarding part of what you're doing, is the diversity of what you're dealing with. It's not just one size fits all. It's a cookie cutter approach.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I must say, added to that is that it's not just me and the client. We lean on, and I lean on heavily, other experts every day. So that's, professionals like yourself, accountants, psychologists, social workers, counsellors, barristers. We're all a team really for the client, and it all needs to kind of work together so that they feel comfortable and we can just move on with the same strategy and same focus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very varied, but I love it too, because, I wouldn't understand how to do half the things that you do.
No, and likewise back to you. Yeah. It's
I think that's pretty fair. I don't think we need a crossover of accountants and
we can share. I can talk tax law with you. You can talk family law with me if you want to.
Not sure.
That sounds like a really entertaining podcast episode, to be honest.
People will be switching off about now and saying,
I think so.
I've done enough of that one.
Yeah. So, Shalini, what do you find the most rewarding thing about being a family lawyer? I know we've talked about how tough it is to have to deal with the, emotional aspects and everything, but obviously there's some reward to it as well. Otherwise you wouldn't still be doing it. So what do you think are the most rewarding elements? There can be more than one, of course.
I think it's seeing the client, like I mentioned before, the cycle, seeing the client come in at a position where they're feeling like nothing's working and they can't figure it out and they're stuck, to seeing them become so confident and self-empowered, whether it's a financial case or a parenting case. I find that really, I can only give them so much legal advice, but it's how they take it on. And, the most rewarding cases have been when they've got the outcome, even if it's not the outcome that they wanted, it's a compromise outcome, but they've got to the point where they can see that that is a benefit to them. And that they can move on with their career, they can move on with their family or their new family. And I think that's so important, because life's not always going to be static. And seeing people being able to adjust to changes, I personally find it really rewarding, but also for their families. And I've had, situations where, we've been in court and we've got an outcome, and the extended family is, they're supporting day in, day out these clients, and seeing that and the relief for them is, again, I find that my role is then, it's quite important to help this, this client, their extended family, their friends. So for me, that's mostly the reason why I continue to do it, just helping.
Yeah. And because and Shane said we would get back to this, and we will, and I'm going to get back to it now because I think it's really important from a mental health perspective.
Yes.
There's a lot of talk about the mental health of the person seeking support from lawyers and accountants and psychologists, etc. And there's not much talk around the mental health of the practitioners who are helping the people with their, less than ideal personal circumstances sometimes. And, I see it in our office, and I'm sure that you see it in your extended practitioner circle as well. And you and I talked the other day about something that I think is really special, and you're looking at me going, no, it's not really. So we know that you're learning Italian, which I think is fantastic. And Shane has talked about learning Italian for the last 25 years,
but
and he never has.
Yeah.
So easily can do it, yes.
So maybe I'll hook the two of you up to start that process. But we talked the other day about music and how important music can be in people's lives, and it's important in our life as well. And you told me that you play an instrument, and not only do you play the instrument, but you play it in some sort of really, I think, pretty cool ways.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
So I play the cello, and I've played it for a very long time, since I was, I'm going to say 9 years old.
Wow.
And for some reason, I just continued playing throughout university, and after university, I kind of found myself in a situation where I didn't have a university or a kind of school situation to keep me tied into an orchestra. And the Melbourne Lawyers Orchestra was born not long after I commenced practice, and that was very convenient for me. So I auditioned and became a cellist in that orchestra. And then obviously COVID hit and things have gone on hiatus a little bit, but we now have, through that orchestra, a few of us have become quite close, or, we've figured out that we work well in a chamber situation. So I will play in chamber, in a chamber group for performances at the Supreme Court Library.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine runs the program, and she's an excellent lawyer, but also an excellent pianist and flautist. And it's amazing to see the people that come for these rehearsals. Honestly, we had judges and barristers and solicitors, and we're all just sitting there, giving it our best shot in the time that we had. And music is really important for me in terms of, again, that balance.
Yeah.
And also a way of expressing your emotions in a different way through the instrument. So the cello is beautiful for anyone who's contemplating it.
It is very beautiful. I agree. I think that it's also really timely to talk about the fact that professionals who are experts in their field at something are often expert in more than one thing. And I think that the fact that there is a Melbourne Lawyers Orchestra makes me very happy, and I wish there were more. And so if you are listening out there and you are part of a professional orchestra that is not like professional musicians, but actually professional other things, and you play music in orchestras, I think it's very cool. So it's hard. Like, being a musician is super hard. Like, you can't just be a cellist. You can't just go, I'm going to pick up a cello and start playing. It's a very difficult thing to do. And you must practice. Like, you have to practice playing the cello in the same way as you have to practice your other professions. And so when do you find time to practice the cello, and how often do you practice, Shalini?
Oh dear, that's not a great question, Andrea. No.
It'll be the same answer as most other non-professional musicians would say, and it's like, not enough.
Yes, not enough. But obviously, performance dates are a key target, and then you work backwards from there. So I remember the most recent performance, we had a really challenging but also really fun quartet. The repertoire was really challenging. So we set up rehearsals on a Sunday morning, which was the best. We were all relaxed and in our jeans and just, chilling. And we set up a few really intense practice sessions, and then had our own solo time. So I think the end date is really the planner for me. But I really should be playing more recreationally. I actually have a close barrister who I work with regularly, and he often says to me, we start the conversation, I'm thinking we're talking about family law, and he goes, how's the cello going? And, I've all the firms that I've worked at, they've all been really supportive of me lugging in this huge hard case and leaving it in my office, and, it always sparks a bit of conversation. So, it is quite I think everyone's really open to that and making sure that we have the balance. So,
yeah, definitely. I think music is the sort of thing that can bring communities together in a way that other things can't. Like it's not competitive, but you still participating in something in a group sort of format. So I think it's a really beautiful thing to do. And I did say to you when we caught up the other day that I would like to know when you're playing so that I can come and listen to you. And I think that if we get that information, we might just add it to the information of the podcast so that people can go and listen to what you do, because I think it's a very cool thing to do. And I'm not a musician, but my kids are, and they are professionals and non-professionals in it. And I just think it's a really good way to be able to release some energy and everything. So it's super cool. I'm so glad. And next time we have you on a podcast, I want you to speak in Italian and play the cello for us. So,
but it seems like there's a bit of demand for it in the legal fraternity, is there, in terms of this orchestra? Because you said people had to audition.
Yes, there was an audition process, which I was not expecting. But again, there was some serious practice that took place before that. But yes, I think because there was quite a big demand, and then there was a wait list, and then at the time, and
so good.
Yeah, Amy, who set the whole thing up. She's phenomenal. I don't know how she did it, plus working, full time. And but we had some really fantastic performances before the lockdown hit, and at the St Paul's Cathedral or the Fed Square, and at Xavier College. So
so
really great. The conductor's fantastic, giving his time to us as well. So we don't practice as much as perhaps the musicians in other orchestras do, and he was very accommodating of that.
What's your favourite type of music to play, and what's your favourite type of music to listen to?
Oh, I love this. So on the cello, I'd love to play Bach, which is a little bit cliche, but also I'm working through the Elgar Cello Concerto at the moment.
Wow.
Which is,
you're working through it.
It was one of those ones that I didn't actually do during lessons and things when I was at school. And I just wanted to set myself that little challenge, and it's beautiful. I've always loved listening to it. So Jacqueline Dupre is my favourite cellist. And then what was the other question?
What do you like to listen to music-wise?
What do I like to listen to music-wise is a bit of a mix. So I grew up with, a lot of 70s music, ABBA and, I have Jim Reeves. It's terrible, but I've got like really old school taste, but also equally love R&B.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm a, classical cellist, and I, listen to some strange music, but I think it's important to diversify. So
yeah. That's very cool. Yeah, super. And badminton.
Yes.
Do you just play that? Is that a competitive thing? Like, do you have a competitive streak?
I do a little bit, but I'm in a group that's they're just miles ahead of me in terms of their skill and talent, and they've been playing for years and years. So I joined this team with a friend of mine. He said, come along and play, and we book out 3 courts every week.
Yeah.
They play twice a week. I make it once a week. Play for 2 hours and I'm dead. But I'm learning. And unfortunately or fortunately, I grew up playing tennis.
Yes.
And so badminton's a bit more on the wrist. And I still do the follow-through swings. So a lot of these players are very patient with me, and I'm just sitting there swinging, and they're like, you play tennis, don't you? I'm like, learning. It's just in the wrist. Yes. Okay. And it's a really good release. I love it. Such a good social
It's a very interesting game to watch.
Yes.
I'm not a player of balls, like bat and ball sports. I have no hand-eye coordination with that. So I don't know how people actually do the hit things. And
to be honest, neither do I. I stick my racket out and hope for the best. It's fun though.
That's excellent. So back to the serious questions to do with it all. We have a lot of clients who come to us, and they are in situations where, they want advice about their family circumstances and how, to get the best outcomes and stuff like that. And we, so, we're talking them through from a financial perspective mostly, because that's where our skill lies in our accounting firm, and our legal firm don't specialise in family law. So we typically are always referring that work off. But it's a whole of service situation. Like, as you said, family lawyers don't do what they do without having conversations with accountants and,
Yes.
other things, because for the most part, people's family situations are not, they're not tied up in a nice little box with a bow on the top of them. They're just all over the place, and everything, as Shane said, is different. If someone was looking for, advice about a family law situation, obviously a family lawyer, but there's other places to go as well, isn't there? And not everyone can afford to pay for an independent family lawyer. What are some of the other organisations that people can go to if they need advice about that sort of stuff, but their financial situation doesn't allow it?
It's a great question. So the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia have fantastic brochures and information for clients.
Mm-hmm.
So I often will give them brochures following our initial conference, or just direct them to the website.
Yep.
They've got videos as well, which I think are great. Outside of that, if you want something a bit more tangible in terms of practical, there are community legal services in all the different community areas. So, Eastern Community Legal, Northern Suburbs, everywhere. So they often provide free advice services. Another organisation that I volunteer for once a month is Monash University, but they have a legal clinic that runs an advice session at night.
Okay.
And clients can call in, and we are very aware of what their situation might be, so we have to call at specific times, and they give us our story and give them advice. The other avenue that a lot of parties are going down now is Family Relationships Australia.
Okay.
And they have various centres in all the suburbs I think it's around Australia. And they assist with parenting, sometimes in financial cases as well, for discussions between the parties.
Yep.
And you may not get the legal advice, but you at least have someone guiding you through that discussion with your former partner.
Yep.
And I find that is very helpful to clients, because then they know what the issues are early, and then they're comprehending what they need to start talking about and thinking about before they see us, which then again makes our conversation really tight and, the advice really clear. So
because I guess what you're dealing with is the absolute endpoint.
That's right.
Like,
hopefully, yes.
It's where, things are finally coming to a head and things like that. So it's hard, there's obviously been a big build up to it. Yep. Most family breakdowns don't happen in a heartbeat. There's long-term things. And so Family Relationships Australia,
that's it.
Supporting families to not be in that position in the first place, to get to that, to need to, the services of a family lawyer, which is probably a good thing, right?
It's a really
not
great
necessarily for Shalini's holiday fun to Italy, but perhaps a better thing for, and the fact that you volunteer at Monash. So, I guess a lot of lawyers probably do that sort of stuff. How does it make you feel when you're a volunteer? We all this is a loaded question. I know what you're going to tell me here, but,
How does it make me feel? There's two reasons why I did it, mainly because I was so lucky to have that placement opportunity when I was at Monash that kind of set this whole thing going all these years later. And Monash have always been so supportive of me at all the different stages of my life. So whether I was at university, just finished university and starting legal practice, I could always go back. There's always a professional body that was able to provide some support. But the other reason is that their service is a night service, so I can volunteer after work. Yeah. So that was really helpful, and I just find it's just a way of giving back, isn't it? So
yeah, it's excellent. I think it's great. I didn't even know. Is it open to anybody in the community?
Yes.
So, okay. Yes. That's probably important for us to mention as well, that it's run by Monash University, but anyone can access that service.
Yep. I believe you call up.
Yeah, okay.
Don't quote me, but I think you call up and explain your circumstances, and then they just arrange an appointment time.
Yeah, yeah. So what are the sorts of things that you typically have to do in a volunteer capacity there?
So I get given the basic overview of a client beforehand.
Yep.
And we have a supervisor, the convener. So she's organising everything. I don't know how she does it, but she does it, just like both of you. And then the students, so it's student run. And the Monash students who are either completing their law degree or just finished, they are the ones who are interacting with the client.
Right, okay.
So then we've got that mentoring element as well. So we've been doing it on Teams. So I sit there with the convener and then they come back with, this is what the client's told me. And then we say, okay, these are the things you should be considering. This is the advice, at least at this stage, or can you find some further information out? And it's an opportunity for them to kind of work on their client skills and interviewing. And I think the most recent one that I did, they had an interpreter, which I just think, that's again through Monash, I had another placement out in Springvale Monash Legal Centre, and that was just formative. And I'm still very close friends with 2 or 3 of them when we were like 19 years old.
Wow,
just sitting there with interpreters, and we talk about it often, but it's a skill because there's clients with those needs. So
yep. That's
exposure
incredible.
is everything.
I didn't even give a thought to the fact that it was student.
That's
led.
Sorry, I didn't mention it.
No, that's a really incredible opportunity for the students as well as the community. So it sounds like Monash, you had a really good experience at Monash. I know not everybody's experiences at university are, top notch, but it sounds like you had a really good experience with yours. So that's terrific. If anyone is out there from Monash listening, Shalini says you're a good mob. So
yeah, they're not bad.
A little bit about the future of family law to finish up our conversation, Shalini. So we talked a little bit about, things that are emerging, but what are you seeing more now, for instance, than what you were pre-COVID? Let's use that as like I think that's our
the line in the sand.
Yeah, that's right.
I would say that since COVID, the separation circumstances are maybe less acrimonious.
Okay. Yeah.
So clients are coming in when they've had this realisation this is not working. And in some respects, we really like those cases because the clients have both come in that mindset that they're like, this is not working, we're going to end this, and that's fine. We both had a chat about it. So this is what we're thinking. What should we do now? Pre-COVID, it might have been, again, those cases where you just think the family lawyer is there because life's really, we just can't deal with this anymore and it's really acrimonious. I think also, like I said earlier, the clients are coming in at a point that's a little bit beyond what they were coming in initially. So they're more informed, they're more equipped with information, or they've prepared things themselves, or they've spoken to their accountants and come in with a spreadsheet of what their balance, their assets and liabilities are. And again, it's more helpful for us. So if anything, everything's more positively geared towards people trying to separate in a more smooth and healthy fashion than might have been. Obviously, you get those cases where the dynamic, you just can't change that. But I think that time during lockdown was pivotal in changing people's mindset about certain things. So even parenting, seeing kids' resilience and what they dealt with during that time, and now how they can deal with separation between their parents or carers. And very interesting seeing the changes in that. I was at a conference last week where the experts were all these family report experts that are psychologists and social workers and whatnot, and they said that they're seeing changes as well in the dynamics of what they're seeing in family situations post-separation and how they're advising, providing recommendations for those families. So it's a very interesting time.
Yeah, it is, because I think a lot of people were talking about how, post-COVID things were going to be much worse for a while, and certainly they're not great in some respects, but it's interesting that you say that there are some positive outcomes from that, from a family dynamic perspective, which is, I think, is a good thing, isn't it? Maybe our institutions have actually evolved a bit faster because of those things and had to make changes to the way they provide services, which is possibly a good thing.
Exactly. For us is, the remote hearings. And now it's almost a rarity that we have in-person hearings. And I, met up with a bunch of colleagues that we've been doing this for a long time, and we're having lunch and saying, oh, we miss those days when you just walk down the corridor at court. It's like, hey, get coffee next week or get lunch. And those things aren't happening as often, but it's also helpful to the client. The client doesn't care about those things, like they just want to get their case heard and dealt with, and don't have to drive to court and get really nervous and sit there with their solicitor and barrister and whatever. They can, check in remotely from Teams, and it's all been working really well.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. The last question, and we normally ask this sort of question at the end of every podcast episode. If you had your time over again, is there anything that you would do differently? And then a piece of advice that you would give to someone who's coming through those years and making decisions about where they want to be in their life?
Anything that I would do differently in relation to family law?
Or just, would you not choose to be a lawyer, for instance, or would you go into music if you had your time over? Would you train to be a concert cellist instead of a family lawyer?
Okay, well, this is delving deep, but if I have my time over, I was very keen on being a professional tennis player.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably realised too late. I was 12 years old when I, said to my parents, I think I want to be a tennis player.
Yeah.
And we had a very long conversation with my coach, Dean Barclay, who's still out there.
Uh-huh.
Wonderful coach. I really like him. And he said, look, it's just a little bit too late.
Wow.
Probably should have come
too
to
late
me
at 12.
or come to this realisation when you were maybe 5 years ago or a little bit early, like
wow, okay.
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
and I was very sad about that. And that was a little bit hard to get over when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I would do, get into that oily.
But who knows as an 8-year-old that they want to be a professional tennis player? Like that's a pretty big ask, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. So I kind of shifted gears, but I think it's worked out in a really it's just worked out well.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would say to kids or students going through university or even school is just to keep that open mindset.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer of things happening for a reason. And it sounds cliche, but the universe really does throw things out in your direction that suit you and shuts the doors to things that don't.
Yeah.
And even in my professional career since being admitted as a lawyer, that has also happened. And I, touch wood, I still believe that that's the case moving forward.
Yeah.
Whether that's conversations with people that have led to, me looking at a firm and applying there, to, attending a seminar. I remember I attended a CPD and I ended up, joining the firm of that presenter a few years later. And that was just pivotal, changed the direction of my career completely. So I would say don't put yourself in one direction or think that that's the end. Really be open-minded about experiences and the people you speak to. And something my parents actually did say to me very early on that I thought, no, but they always used to say to me, you never know where you're going to see this person again.
Yes.
And you also never know what this opportunity is going to bring up for you.
Exactly.
So always just do it. I remember I used to have to drive, 50 minutes to university or even for volunteering at that time. And I used to say, I can't be bothered. I'm just going to stay at home. And they would say, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think I'm so grateful now for that advice when I was younger because they're right. Like, things just happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Really good parental advice. Well done, Shalini's parents. On that note, because we'll finish positively with the fact that your parents actually are really good people and gave you really good advice. Thank you for joining us today, Shalini. It was really a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I hope it wasn't too grueling.
It wasn't. Thank you very much for having me. You're
welcome.
Wonderful to chat.
Thanks so much.
It's been great.